Hey everyone, welcome back to Reliable Prepper. Today, we're tackling a subject that's crucial in these unpredictable times: how to identify, locate, and prepare safe zones and alternative shelters for times when you need a reliable fallback plan. Whether you're dealing with political tensions, civil unrest, natural disasters, or, in the most extreme cases, the declaration of martial law, knowing where to go and having a backup plan can truly make a difference in staying safe. Having these options at the ready is about so much more than just avoiding discomfort. It's about knowing you have a strategy when situations become unstable or even dangerous. If this is your first time on the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on future preparedness tips and updates. I'm also gearing up my Facebook where I'll be posting more content and insights. And if you sign up for our free bi-weekly newsletter, you'll get access to exclusive prepping strategies and my new ebook, Surviving Civil Unrest, a complete guide absolutely free. Now let's get into what it takes to be ready with a solid plan for finding safe zones and alternative shelters. First, let's talk about why understanding safe zones and alternative shelters is so important and who benefits most from this knowledge. Being prepared isn't only about stockpiling supplies, it's about understanding your environment, identifying safe locations, and thinking ahead to avoid chaotic situations. Some people need this knowledge more than others, and they include urban dwellers, at-risk communities, families with special considerations, and proactive preppers. For those of you living in densely populated urban areas, this guide will be especially useful. Cities are often focal points during times of unrest, where large gatherings, protests, and increased law enforcement presence become the norm. If civil unrest erupts or if curfews are set in place, having a safe, alternative place to go is essential. Living in a big city during heightened political tensions or uncertain times can quickly become challenging, as these areas are more likely to attract crowds, and thus, they carry greater risks when things become heated. Then, there are at-risk communities, which include people in neighborhoods prone to higher crime rates, areas with politically charged atmospheres, and locations where protests are more likely to be a part of the landscape. If you've experienced unrest in your area before, you know how things can escalate. Having safe zones identified in advance allows you to get ahead of any potential escalation and stay one step removed from it. Families with children or elderly members face unique challenges when considering evacuation in safe zones. When you have loved ones who can't move quickly or who might need specific care, planning ahead and knowing exactly where you can safely go removes a lot of anxiety. Evacuating in high-stress situations can become a logistical nightmare without a clear plan, and having options for safe places with easier access can really make a difference. And for anyone who considers themselves proactive about preparedness, this information is foundational. This knowledge allows you to stay adaptable during crises and empowers you to make informed decisions that keep you in control of your own safety. By mapping out safe zones and having alternatives, you give yourself options even in the most unexpected situations, whether that's civil unrest, infrastructure failure, or severe weather. Safe zones are essentially pre-designated places where you can find safety, resources, and possibly even trained personnel who can offer assistance during times of crisis. Safe zones aren't just any location. They're selected because they offer a higher likelihood of stability and reliability. But while safe zones can offer security, it's also important to understand the risks and limitations associated with each type of safe zone, so you're fully aware of what to expect and prepared for any issues that may arise. During periods of unrest, especially those that may occur around political events or periods of heightened tensions, safe zones can include places like police stations, fire departments, hospitals, and designated community centers. Police stations, for example, are designed to be secure and are staffed with personnel trained to handle emergencies. However, police stations can also become flashpoints during times of civil unrest, particularly if the unrest itself is tied to political or social tensions involving law enforcement. In these cases, a police station might actually become a gathering point for crowds, which can lead to increased tensions or even violent incidents. This is why it's essential to consider the type of crisis you're facing before choosing a police station as your safe zone. Fire departments are generally less likely to become sites of protest or civil unrest and can be reliable safe zones. Fire stations, unlike police stations, often remain focused purely on community service without any connection to political enforcement. However, One potential risk with using a fire department as a safe zone is that they may be prioritizing their resources for actual fire emergencies or medical rescues during natural disasters. So while fire stations can be safe, they may not have the time or resources to assist individuals seeking refuge during a crisis. Hospitals can also serve as dependable safe zones, especially in emergencies where medical assistance might be required. Hospitals are generally prioritized to stay operational even during times of crisis, and they are staffed by personnel who are trained in emergency response. However, hospitals carry their own unique risks, especially during civil unrest or high-stress situations. For one, hospitals are vulnerable to overcrowding, which can limit their ability to help everyone seeking assistance. During a widespread emergency, hospitals may become packed, and wait times could extend to the point where getting immediate help becomes very difficult. Another issue is that hospitals may restrict access to certain areas, especially under martial law, where resources are limited, and the building might be on lockdown to prevent overcrowding. Community centers, on the other hand, are often utilized as emergency shelters or safe zones designated by local governments. They tend to be located in accessible areas and can serve as reliable places to go if your neighborhood becomes unsafe. However, community centers are also prone to overcrowding and may not have sufficient facilities if the crisis escalates. Furthermore, if the unrest reaches a level where martial law is declared, community centers may be closed or have limited access, which is why having multiple safe zones and alternatives prepared is key. Ultimately, safe zones are best for short-term safety, providing a place to regroup, rest, and plan your next move. They're not typically intended for extended stays, which is why having alternative shelter options is an essential part of any preparedness plan. Each safe zone has its benefits and risks, and knowing them ahead of time helps you make informed decisions that increase your chances of staying safe and away from any unexpected chaos. Mapping out safe zones and planning how to get there is something every serious prepper should take the time to do in advance. Creating this map involves not only pinpointing safe zones, but also understanding how to reach them safely and what alternate routes might be necessary. Situations can change rapidly in a crisis, especially in urban areas where roads may be blocked by crowds or restricted by law enforcement. Start by obtaining a basic map of your area and marking key safe zones such as police stations, fire departments, hospitals, and any officially designated community centers. Think of these locations as primary safe zones that offer security and potentially access to resources. But as we discussed, each one comes with its own potential risks. Police stations, for example, may be closed off or guarded during heightened political tension, which makes it necessary to identify at least 2 or 3 additional safe zones nearby. Once you've marked your primary and secondary safe zones, you'll want to map out at least 3 possible routes to each. A key strategy here is to plan alternate routes that take you away from main roads and high-traffic areas, which can become dangerous during unrest. Smaller side streets, residential back roads, and even pedestrian paths are often less congested and easier to navigate during times of crisis. However, these quieter routes also carry some risks, especially if they're not well lit or heavily populated. Familiarize yourself with each route during different times of day so you know which ones feel safer to travel, even in lower visibility. Another crucial aspect is having both digital and physical versions of your map. Relying on GPS is convenient, but in a serious crisis, cell service could be disrupted or even intentionally restricted. Print out your map, mark your routes clearly, and if possible, laminate it or store it in a waterproof pouch so it remains durable under any conditions. Practicing these routes with your family or those in your household can also increase everyone's confidence in navigating them quickly if the need arises. Finally, consider using real-time apps that offer up-to-date information on road closures, safety alerts, and traffic. Although they're useful, be cautious and don't rely solely on these digital tools. The best backup is always a well-planned route and a physical map, along with a solid understanding of your surroundings. Even with the best planning, there may be situations when public safe zones like police stations or community centers are either inaccessible or unsafe. In times of high tension, particularly when civil unrest breaks out, these traditional safe zones may quickly reach capacity, become overcrowded, or even close to the public. That's why knowing about alternative shelter options is a crucial part of comprehensive preparedness. Alternative shelters can include private or semi-private spaces like covered parking garages, storage units, and even certain types of campgrounds. These spaces aren't traditional shelters, and they're not equipped with all the amenities, but they offer basic protection and can be a discreet place to regroup and plan your next steps if other safe zones are inaccessible. Parking garages, for example, are found in nearly every urban area and can provide shelter from harsh weather while also offering some privacy. These spaces are multi-leveled, often have stairwells, and can help you avoid street-level crowds if you need to stay out of sight. However, using alternative shelters like parking garages or storage units comes with its own set of risks. First, these locations are often poorly lit and can be isolated, which might make them targets for petty crime or loiterers, especially in urban areas. In a large-scale emergency, other people may also have the same idea, which can lead to unexpected confrontations. Moreover, depending on the circumstances, there may be restrictions in place around using private properties, which means it's essential to use alternative shelters only when absolutely necessary and only for short periods. Staying aware of your surroundings is critical, as you may need to leave quickly if the situation changes. Community-based shelters are another alternative worth considering, especially those that may not be officially listed but have the potential to be opened during emergencies. Churches, school gymnasiums, and smaller community centers are often designated as overflow shelters when traditional shelters reach capacity. Establishing a connection with local community groups or leaders ahead of time can give you insight into which locations might be used as backup shelters. Churches, for example, can sometimes open their doors to community members, providing a safe indoor space that might be quieter and less crowded than a typical public shelter. Schools are also good to have on your list as they're often easily accessible, located in residential neighborhoods, and might have basic facilities to support evacuees. Yet even community-based shelters come with potential risks. Churches and schools, if opened as emergency shelters, may still face challenges like overcrowding, limited sanitation facilities, and shortages of basic supplies. Additionally, if the unrest escalates or if martial law is declared, community shelters could potentially be put under restrictions or require additional security, which can limit their availability or accessibility. Knowing these risks helps you approach these shelters with a realistic understanding of what they can offer, and to be prepared for situations where even these spaces may be less than ideal. For truly desperate situations where all traditional and community shelters are unavailable, you might need to consider abandoned buildings or warehouses. This should be seen as a last resort option, as these locations pose various dangers, especially when it comes to structural integrity and general safety. Entering an abandoned building requires caution. Look for stable structures, prioritize those that have clear exits, and avoid going into buildings that appear poorly maintained or recently damaged. Be aware that many abandoned spaces aren't legal to enter, and some may even be monitored or patrolled, so using these spaces should be a temporary measure only. When using alternative shelters, it's essential to bring a well-prepared go bag with you. This bag should include water, basic first aid supplies, a flashlight, a small power bank for electronics, and even a thermal blanket if you're expecting cold weather. These essentials become even more critical when using alternative shelters, as they're unlikely to have resources on hand. Relying on your own supplies helps you stay self-sufficient and less vulnerable in situations where traditional support structures are unavailable or unreliable. In dense urban areas, where both safe zones and alternative shelters might be limited or compromised, knowing where to find hidden or unconventional shelter options can be incredibly valuable. This is particularly true during periods of civil unrest or martial law, when traditional public spaces could be restricted or heavily monitored. Hidden shelter options allow you to stay out of the spotlight, which can be helpful if you're navigating a situation where staying unnoticed is a priority. Parking garages are one of the best hidden shelter options because they offer cover from weather, multiple levels for privacy, and usually have various entry and exit points. During high-tension times, a multi-level parking garage can serve as a discreet temporary refuge. However, there are risks associated with parking garages. These locations aren't meant for shelter, so they lack facilities, lighting can be poor, and security might be non-existent. Parking garages can sometimes attract loiterers or individuals looking for shelter themselves, which means there's a potential for unwanted encounters. Additionally, in some situations, authorities may sweep these areas to clear people out, especially under martial law. Staying alert and keeping a low profile are critical if you decide to use a parking garage. Another option to consider is the basement level of larger buildings, especially those in commercial areas that may be less occupied during times of unrest. Basements in department stores, older office buildings, or warehouses can provide temporary shelter if you need to avoid large crowds, or if you're in a densely populated area. One major benefit of basements is that they're generally out of sight, so they offer a higher level of privacy. However, accessing basements isn't always straightforward, and some buildings may have restricted areas that make entry challenging. Moreover, basements come with their own risks, such as poor air circulation, the potential for flooding, and limited exit routes. If you plan to use a basement as a hidden shelter, make sure you have an immediate plan for getting in and out, and that you're aware of any hazards the location might pose. Lesser-known parks or small public alcoves in industrial areas can also function as temporary shelter if you need a quiet place to regroup. Parks with dense trees, gazebos, or small buildings like restrooms can offer minimal cover and be relatively hidden from main roads. However, these options are more exposed than buildings or parking structures, so they should only be considered for short-term use. In cases where civil unrest is active or curfews are in place, any form of public gathering may draw attention, and you could risk being asked to leave or even face confrontation from authorities or other individuals. Be mindful of this when choosing exposed or semi-exposed shelters. When using any hidden shelter, it's essential to keep a low profile. Enter and exit quietly, avoid using visible lights that might attract attention, and try to keep movement subtle to stay unnoticed. It's also wise to have an emergency plan for leaving quickly, especially if you sense the area becoming more active or if you spot law enforcement activity nearby. Hidden shelters are meant for temporary use only, so approach them as last resort options to avoid staying in one place too long. Knowing where to go is only part of the challenge. Getting to your safe zone or shelter safely requires its own set of strategies, especially if you're navigating through high-risk areas. During times of civil unrest, when tensions are high and emotions run strong, traveling with caution can help you avoid confrontations or unexpected obstacles. Staying calm, moving discreetly, and blending in with the environment are all essential when heading to a safe zone. The first thing to consider is your appearance. Dress in neutral, inconspicuous clothing that helps you avoid standing out. Avoid any clothing or accessories that are bright, flashy, or could be perceived as a statement. Neutral tones like gray, brown, and black work well for blending in without drawing attention, and a low-profile backpack is ideal for carrying essentials without looking overly prepared. The goal here is to appear as if you're part of the general public, not someone with specific intentions or affiliations. When traveling to a safe zone, moving in small groups can offer safety without attracting unwanted attention. Groups of 2 or 3 people are ideal because they're large enough to provide mutual support if necessary, but small enough to avoid appearing like a crowd. Large groups tend to draw more scrutiny, and you may encounter issues if authorities or others perceive your group as a gathering or a potential threat. Smaller groups also allow for faster movement, which is crucial if you're trying to reach a shelter quickly. One of the best ways to stay safe en route to a shelter is to remain as quiet and calm as possible. Tensions can be high during times of unrest, and loud noises or erratic movements can make you a target for both authorities and individuals looking for conflict. Take your time when moving, and if possible, keep your route flexible in case you need to make adjustments to avoid roadblocks, crowds, or other unexpected obstacles. Being able to think on your feet is important, and a calm demeanor will help you assess situations objectively without unnecessary panic. It's also a good idea to carry a lightweight go bag with essentials that support your journey. Pack items like a flashlight for visibility, Idaho for identification if asked, a small first aid kit, and a portable phone charger. If you anticipate moving through areas where crowd control methods like tear gas might be in use, bringing a scarf or light cloth to cover your mouth and nose can provide some protection. These items are lightweight, easy to carry, and make a difference if you encounter an unexpected situation en route. Keeping an eye on your surroundings is one of the most valuable skills when navigating through high-risk areas. Try to be aware of subtle changes in the environment like growing crowds, increased law enforcement presence, or even unusual sounds in the distance. These cues can alert you to potential hazards or indicate areas where unrest may be intensifying. Adapting your route based on these observations can help you avoid getting caught up in the very events you're trying to evade. Being prepared with safe zones, alternate shelter options, and safe travel routes gives you flexibility and resilience, no matter the circumstances. The foundation of preparedness lies in knowing your options, understanding the risks, and having the adaptability to make decisions on the fly. By mapping out your safe zones and preparing for potential disruptions, you put yourself in a position of control, which can make all the difference when things feel uncertain. Before we wrap up, don't forget to subscribe to Reliable Prepper to stay updated with our latest tips and insights on crisis preparedness. Follow us on Facebook for more discussions, and if you want exclusive content, sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter. Subscribers will also receive my free ebook, Surviving Civil Unrest, a complete guide. Thanks for watching, stay safe, and remember that every small step you take in preparedness helps build your confidence, your peace of mind, and your safety during challenging times.